Hello, welcome. My notes here. This is another health illness update. I believe it's update number 16. That's 1-6. And I think our previous one was just about a month ago. Although it feels like it's been many months, but that's what I have, early June. And now it's early July. So at any rate, just go back over what's new. So soon after the last update, I had my IVC filter retrieval. So, I feel it. There's still like a mark here, I guess, where they went in to the jugular when they thread it down and they draw out the filter. And so that's a procedure. There's, I guess, just some local anesthetic, and I was awake throughout and talking to them and stuff. We had imaging of that prior to the procedure, which I guess informed the procedure, and blood work, and the imaging showed that it hadn't broken, it hadn't shifted, and it looked as easy to retrieve as it could be, because I guess sometimes they shift or move or break. And during the retrieval, they might also break, or the whole of it isn't retrieved or whatever, which is its own complication. And so when they pull it out, they take pictures of it, and they count, and they double count and make sure they have every little bit, because it kind of looked like a bit like a spider, or maybe a flattened shuttlecock, maybe. And it was quite a bit bigger than I thought it might be. I was pretty interested to see that. I asked him if I can keep it, and the surgeon was like, I don't really see why not. Nobody asks, but you probably could, but we got to run it by people and make sure it's actually okay. And apparently the answer was no, you can't. And you can see it, but you can't have it, even though I bought it, But apparently, because there's some sharp parts to it, you're not allowed to have it. So I didn't argue. It was fine. But I was curious to see. Anyway, that all went well, and I was bandaged up for, I think, 3 days. No complications there, no infections. And I continued on the blood thinner that, they put me on as soon as they noticed, or as soon as I noticed that I had a clot, and I got them to agree over, I think, 3 days to actually scan for it and check. So anyway, that's sort of a past tense thing now, I suppose. And so that was on June 7th. A week after that, I saw the liver surgeon, Dr. Billingsley, and I was able to report that I didn't notice any complications or challenges. Just barely bear with me here. He said, look, I'm just working on nutrition, meditation, exercise, sleep. That's my focus, he went through some questions, did an exam, really gave me plenty of time if I had anything else I wanted to ask, and if you wanted to chat a little bit. There was no real kind of rush. Felt very open and engaged, and I asked some questions, I learned some stuff. One of the things that I asked him was about the ongoing neuropathies that I have since being in the hospital. And he suggested that they're probably nerve damage specific to the platinum in the oxaliplatin, I believe, one of the chemotherapy regimen drugs, which doesn't particularly help me. Just kind of curious. We might come back to that story when I continue with this update. Quite sore and tired today. I think he just said, I'll see you in December, I think, like quite a long time to go, and I could ring up if I had any questions, but he confirmed that what he was feeling underneath the incision spots was scar tissue, and that's normal. So that was good to have a doctor touch it and confirm what I had guessed, but I've never had it before, so figured I should ask. What else? And I asked him a few other questions, and he said these are probably questions for the other doctors, but that he would help me follow up if I wasn't able to, and so forth. So some of these kind of questions I have, I don't know how pertinent they are, but they're educational for me, and I don't quite know who to direct them to, so I tend to direct them to the first medical professional I see, in case they're the right person. And generally, if they're not the right person, they're the right person to tell me who the right person is. And so then I just make a note, and when I see that right person, I'll repeat the question. So that was June 14th. Then June 28th, so 2 weeks later, looks like everything's happening on Wednesdays. I'm filming this on a Wednesday. I had my CT scan with contrast. That's not the chest, but the abdomen and pelvis. And that's ordered by the oncologist, and I guess indeed the whole team is interested in those results. And that went well. Sam took me in and took care of me, and Bradley Bear was there, of course, and people were delighted to see him. That went very smooth at Goose Lane in Guildford. You can see the shadow of the Bunny Buddha in the window. Currently I'm in need of a nap, sorry. So that went well. The results I was able to read, I think, the next day didn't show any lesions or growths or anything of concern, but, I'm not the one that's meant to read those and interpret those results, but I didn't see anything of particular concern. Those results went to my oncologist, of course, who I saw today. Today is July 5. I'll go back to Billingsley, the liver doctor, asking about the neuropathies. And as I recall, he said most of the people that experience the neuropathies see them resolved within 18 months. So I think 30 days to 18 months, basically. He said a few people see them resolved in the first month. And he said another very few percentage of people at 18 months, they still experience them. Those people tend to see them resolve anyway, just that it takes longer. So that kind of gave me some kind of sense of where to, sort of graph out my experience, because I still feel like I am still having these neuropathic effects, which are minor. It's not a big complaint, but it's, something I can monitor. And I have had no sense of how long might be normal to see them continue. Maybe forever, maybe 6 years, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know. And so I think he seemed to think I might be heading towards being one of the people that it takes longer to resolve, and that's just how it goes. So that was interesting. So I saw Dr. Stein today, and when I had last seen her, and this is probably in the last update, she was on the fence about, do I start chemo again or not? She said in my particular case, I had just a very little bit of chemo and the surgeries, and we would expect, I think it's 12 is the number of sort of sessions, and I think she was relating to studies for stage 2 colon cancer, I think. But she said you would tend to finish that course. Even though my course was interrupted by surgery, she said, I might, it seems likely that you just continue, per the sort of the usual way this is done. But she didn't see any signs of cancer in me on imaging or blood work. I don't know if they're looking at the blood work per se, but she didn't see any signs. And the labs were great from both surgeries. In other words, good margins on the tissue removed. So she's like, well, the tendency is just as soon as you can continue on the course in order to complete it, that makes sense. But on the other hand, you've had quite a pause in your course. It might not even be considered a continuation of a course if there's such a pause. It's really just a new course. In which case, do you start and count to 12, starting from 0? Or do you kind of look at the real numbers that you're seeing in this individual case, me, and say maybe we just complete the course or maybe we don't? And that's when I suggested a ctDNA test, because it might give us a little bit more information, because it seemed that she was on the fence whether or not I do chemo or not. And I thought that might be another data point, another argument for or against, I don't know. So we scheduled that. I want to say it was May 4th, but let's see. April 5th, that was close. It was 4-5, not 5-4. And so we scheduled that and we sent it in. It took a long time to get the results. I finally got the results and they came through Dr. Stein's office. And this would have been, I'm going to say 3 weeks ago. I think three weeks. I think it might be exactly 3 weeks, like yesterday. So I finally got the results. They were very apologetic. They were like, why don't you have your results? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just being patient. I'm waiting. And they're like, well, and I asked, like, where do I get the results? And they said, they come through us, from us. You'll hear your results from the oncologist office. Okay, that's fine. And they say, oh, we've had them. We just didn't let you know, or didn't know we had them, or something like that. They were apologetic. I said, well, either way, it sounds like I'm about to get them. And the results were, and the ctDNA test is, they've gotten the tissue from my actual cancer because of surgery, and they create, they pick out, like a dozen and a half snippets of the DNA that are kind of unique to that cancer, and then they set them up, and then when they get my blood, they look for anything that's representative of my actual cancer, not just cancer in general, but that thing that's causing me a problem. And apparently it's, sensitive to like 0.01%. They're really just looking for the cancer that, that I have had. So, and if it's circulating in the blood, then it means there's something going on. And it might not be the something that's going on that is detectable on imaging yet. In other words, it might be an early detection, a very early detection. It's incredibly precise. So anyway, the results that I got, and this is 3 weeks ago, as I recall, were negative, which sounds great. But literally the only word I got was negative. I couldn't get any more information from anybody, including the counselor or whatever, the coordinator, the patient care coordinator at the drug company that did the test, who was otherwise very pleasant and helpful in terms of ordering the blood draws and so forth. And by the time I got the results, I had already given blood a second time for a second test. And I hadn't heard the results from the first test. But I figure, well, at least there's 2 tests out there, Maybe you get a positive and a negative or something, I don't know. And I reached back out to the oncologist a number of times, didn't hear anything back, which seemed to me to be unusual based on the past history. I just wanted to kind of get a little bit more understanding of the results, or read a fuller report, or understand what that means. For example, is there like a baseline amount of these cancer cells that they would say is normal, but it's really just once you reach beyond that it's a concern. And so a negative test would mean they still saw some, but not enough to inspire action. I just don't know. And my understanding is that, and had been, the most likely answer is that if they give you a negative result, it means it's the cancer, if it's there, is not detectable by our test. Meaning, if there is any, it's so few parts that it eludes detection. In other words, you don't have any, basically. That's not to say you're free and clear forever, but you don't have any. So that aligns with maybe the best news that you might expect to get if you were expecting good news. So I go into the office today, I have a bunch of questions, and they were still pretty confused about how I got in the test results and where they were and what was going on and how many tests did I have and did the second one. Meanwhile, the drug company reached out to me to get a third blood draw for a third test. So I'm trying to schedule that now. Anyway, so 4/5, that test was negative, and I found out today the test I did on 5/24, so a month and a couple weeks after that, was also negative. So that means I've had 2 ctDNA tests, both of them negative, and apparently negative means undetectable in the system, which sounds pretty good. I mean, but nobody in the office was saying things like remission or cure. Nobody used any words even a little bit like that. So anyway, once we got all this, and I know my MSI was negative too, once we got all this, more blood work stuff, once I got all this, my doctor was still kind of not quite sure where we go. And I'm fine with that, by the way. That's not a complaint. I'd rather have honest uncertainty than, sort of ego-driven semi-certainty, right? Like, hey, if you're not quite sure, I can understand that. I just said to him, I'm interested in the best outcome. If you tell me I'm going to do chemo tomorrow, I will report for duty, right? So we were talking about the neuropathies, and she said that the fact that the neuropathies persist is an argument in favor of no more chemotherapy because of the deleterious effect it's had on me. So I guess that means if I show signs of neuropathic suffering due to chemo, I'm likely to get it again, or maybe it means that it's likely to accumulate and it gets worse. I don't quite know, but I think that kind of helped sway her. And then, so we left it at, I got a port flush for my port, which I don't know how well you can see on the camera. Oh, it's got a Band-Aid, I don't know, but there's a little bump there. And I wanted to get that flush, so that's one of the things I pushed for, to get a saline flush because it's been in disuse for a while. I asked about it, I said, it sounds like based on the neuropathies that I'm not very likely to be getting chemo soon. So does that mean we take this out? And she said, you know what? I'd rather keep it in. We tend to keep it in for a long while. She said, unless you're having an issue. And I said, I'm not. It's fine. Things were going too fast. I couldn't figure out a flush schedule, but I'm going to just reach out and try and figure that out. This particular doctor is very this, and I have to go and really prepare with my questions and really push to get them across and get them answered. Or at least that's what I'm finding. So I tried to figure out a frequency for ctDNA testing, a frequency for blood draw, frequency for imaging, frequency of oncological visits, and I couldn't get a direct answer, but we did schedule each of those things for 3 months from now, October. So I don't know if that's the expected or usual frequency, barring any changes, but maybe that's what it'll be for some time, where every 3 months I do this sort of thing. And I don't know, the ctDNA testing has an interesting schedule that I came to understand when I was looking at it. I can't remember, but it was like 3 weeks, then 5 weeks, then 11 weeks, and then 19 weeks. It was just kind of like a Fibonacci thing. It wasn't every 4 weeks, so I'm not really sure. So I assume I'll follow their schedule. I also asked to speak to a genetic counselor so I can kind of learn more about this and what this might mean. Mostly for me, I think it's educational, but she was perfectly open, like, yeah, I'll schedule with somebody. And she said, I'm going to try and find you a really good one because some of the genetic counselors have had issues. She kind of pulled me in and whispered, have had issues, appearing to perhaps be racist and stuff like that. And we didn't really get into it. I can imagine where that might have been coming from, but she was really looking out for me. She's like, I don't want you to have to see one of those. I said, I'll see whoever I need to see. I can handle whatever it is. So I asked her about the blood thinner Eliquis, which I'm on, and everybody had said that she would be the one that would decide if I stay on it for some time or not. And she said she'd rather think about it than give me an answer right then and maybe do it in consultation with the other doctors and surgeons. And I said, it's perfectly fine with me. I'm in no rush. It's not causing me side effects. The insurance seems to cover it. No problem. So I kind of like that answer instead of her feeling like she was asked a question. She needed to give me a cogent answer right then. I was fine with that. So 10/4, I have a CT scan. 10/11, I see the oncologist again. And that's it. So that's our update. So besides that, just want to say thank you. People donating to GoFundMe have kept me alive and have allowed me to move and sort of resettle. Hopefully begin paying down the medical debt and, settling in. A lot of people have helped just regularly here, just coming over to weed whack or assemble furniture or paint or clean or, mow the lawn or, donate plants and help out. Hopefully quite soon we'll get this gazebo up and we'll plan a really short little hour-long Sunday workshop and then follow that up with a picnic and as a small way of saying thanks to everybody. I wish I could say a date for that yet, but it's taken the time it's taken. So thanks for your continued support on patreon.com/somedayfarm and YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. Coming to class, sending people to class, and most especially for donating on GoFundMe or people directly sending what they can in terms of dropping off food, which has been greatly helpful, or dropping off gift cards for food, or dropping off, something into the Venmo or PayPal account, or indeed the GoFundMe. So thanks very much. SomedayFarm.org. This is Barely Bear saying goodbye too. Oh, by the way, they said we're not going to see Barely Bear regularly for a while, so they sent him home with a bunch of extra Band-Aids because they didn't expect they'd see me for a few months, which is a big change from what it's been. So, love, thanks. Come to class, do your practice.